What's up guys, my name is Liam and today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Endgame Gear OP1 gaming mice. Now, I never thought that in 2024 I would ever be using a wired gaming mouse again, but I can promise you that you'll want to stick around for this one. Not only could this potentially be the fastest gaming mouse on the market, it is using a new switch that is almost cheating. Let's check it out. And before we get started today, I did want to let you know these were all sent out to me by Endgame Gear. However, everything you're going to be seeing in this video is going to be my own words and my own opinions. So they do have three different versions. They do have the OP1. This comes in a white and black colorway. Then they have the OP1 RGB. This comes in a white frost or a dark frost color. And then you have the flagship, which is the OP1 8K. This comes in the white or the black colorway. And here are some of the general specifications on the box. All of these have very slight differences to them. I'll go over those here shortly, but as you can see, the OP1 and the OP1 RGB, they are using the same microcontroller in it, whereas on the OP1 8K it does have a different microcontroller. As I opened all three of these up, they are packaged very nicely. The RGB and the 8K version does have this bigger style box. The cable comes nice and wrapped up. I didn't have any issues with any of these three models having any type of kinks in the cable. And included inside the box, starting out with the OP1, you do have this cable tie. It does have a set of these larger skates, a user manual, and pretty much the same stuff on the other ones. The RGB version does actually also come with some additional grips, and with the white frost version it does come with these white grips, but you do also still get these bigger style skates. And it also does come with a screwdriver, and this screwdriver does actually have the same coating on it as the actual surface of the mouse itself. And then the same thing with the 8K, you do get a set of the larger skates, you do get a set of grips, cable tie, user manual. You also do get the screwdriver with the coating on it. And as far as these skates go on all these versions, these skates felt great on all of them. There is a slight variance with these skates on the 8K version. Even though they look incredibly similar to one another, I did find the skates to be just slightly quicker over here on the OP1 8K. But when it does come to the build quality and the feeling of all three of these in hands, it really does feel premium. And I'm really glad they sent me out all these models, because it's honestly really shocking to me to see how precise they are with just the tolerances on these mice, the overall detail between them. It really is some impressive stuff. Like, for example, starting out with the OP1, this all around feels great. It's got the premium coating on it, feels solid. The side buttons, they feel incredibly premium. There is just a little bit of play there, but not a whole lot. Pretty even from front to back, with just on the side here having just a little bit more of play, but just all around the buttons on here, there is very minimal pre-travel and post-travel. But when it comes to the 8K version, they did mention that they did slightly tighten up the tolerances just a little bit, and you can just slightly feel the tighter tolerances. It's not a major deal or anything like that, but it's honestly just really impressive to me how much thought and detail they put in this. With a lot of cheaper mice that I've tested, I've gotten multiple copies. Sometimes it's kind of a mixed batch, you don't know what you're going to get, but with these I really do feel like the way that they described them to me, overall the feeling of them and the tolerances really do feel spot on. And another question that I had myself before I picked these up is if this transparent version was going to have the premium coating on it, and it does. These all have the same coating. The process for the coating was just slightly a little bit different on these versions. I don't know the exact details behind it, but it still feels incredibly grippy and premium. And in fact, even though these feel very similar to one another, I do kind of feel like this does feel just slightly a little bit more grippy to me. But again, the coating on these, they feel just incredibly similar all around. And then one slight difference that there is with the OP1 and OP1 RGB versus the OP1 8K is the weight of the switches. The Kailh GX switches in the OP1 and the OP1 RGB have an actuation force of around 60 to 65 GF. So the switches really do feel great on all these copies, but they do feel just a little bit lighter over here on the OP1 8K. Whereas with the Kailh GX switches in the OP1 8K, they have an actuation force of around 55 to 60 GF. And in fact, Endgame Gear actually has switch packs for all of these mice, and they have an even lighter Kailh GX switch pack that is around 50 to 55 GF, and we will jump into all those different switch packs in a minute, and I'll go over my recommendations on what switch that I prefer to use for each one of these. And aside from that, with everything feeling great on these mice, when it comes to the cable, I feel like this is a really high-end, good quality cable. It's really lightweight, and I didn't have any issues with it feeling too stiff on me. With the OP1 8K, you do have the options to use the 2K, the 4K, or the 8K polling rate, whereas with the OP1 and the OP1 RGB, you do have a maximum polling rate on both of these of only up to 1000 Hertz. So I figured I'd open these up really quick just to show you what the internals look like, to kind of show you the differences between these. Here is what the pin looks like for the cable for the mouse. But as you can see here on the RGB, it does have this additional extension for the PCB out here on the rear, adding an additional RGB LED. And here's a brief walkthrough of the software for the OP1 and the OP1 RGB. You do have the capability to adjust most things like the liftoff distance. You also do have the capability to enable or disable motion sync. It also does have this slam click prevention filter. I did notice if I were to slam this mouse really hard, you can get some slam clicks, but enabling this feature seemed to work out well. And all around, you're going to get the lowest click latency possible on both of these. It does not give you the option to adjust the balance setting, but these are the settings that I used that seem to work best for these gaming mice for me. And when it comes to the OP1 8K, it is using this different style of software, incredibly easy to use. Over here on the first page, it does allow you to adjust the liftoff distance, and down here is where you can adjust your CPI settings. You could put multiple ones on here. I usually just stick to one. And the third tab over here does allow you to adjust the button mapping on the mouse. If you're left-handed, it will swap mouse 1 and mouse 2, but then over here in the advanced settings tab is where this mouse starts to get interesting. You do have the option to enable or disable motion sync, but that only works up to the 4000 Hertz polling rate. Once you do enable 8000 Hertz on this mouse, it no longer allows you to use motion sync. It also does have this option right here for the slam click filter. I do recommend enabling this option to prevent any type of slam clicking. And next up in this section down here, this is the multi-click filter, something that I took from Freak with Endgame gear. I saw him commenting about this, saying that lower values are more sensitive to detect clicks. When this setting is at 0, almost every click is a double click. Higher values can help mitigate double clicking switches, but prolongs the overall click length. 8 is the perfect value that the mouse was calibrated for. However, this setting does not affect click latency. It only affects the click length. And then finally, we have this SPDT option over here. And if I were to click on this, as you can see, you do have a couple of options here. One, to have it off. Then it does have this GX speed mode, and it also has a GX safe mode. And to better explain these options for you, let me go ahead and break down these switches really quick. First off, let's start by looking at a Huano blue shell pink dot. This is what the inside of it looks like. So really typical stuff when you actually do compress the switch down. It does have this little node right here that sits at the top, and once you click it, you have the switch come down and make contact with the bottom plate, and that is obviously how it's going to detect that you clicked on your mouse. And when it comes to these Kailh GX switches, this is where it shows you how they are a little bit different. So if you were to compress the switch down, as you can see, it's actually pretty similar to the Huano blue shell pink dot switch. But if you do look closely here at the nodes, there actually is a node up here at the top and both at the bottom. So if you were to leave this GX mode off, then this is going to function as a normal switch. Once you do compress it and the node makes contact in the bottom there, that is what will activate the switch itself. So if you were to switch this option down here to the GX speed mode, this is where it gets different. Here you have the middle click plate, and it is at rest making contact with the top node. Once you compress the switch and the middle plate disconnects contact from the top node there, that is how it will actually activate the switch. Now there's a little bit more complexity to it than just that. It doesn't just signal it right away. They actually have a double confirmation for this to reduce any false positives happening, meaning that there is just a tiny delay to ensure that contact was actually released from the top. This setting is my preferred setting. I did prefer to use this GX speed mode on both mouse 1 and 2. And then finally, the GX safe mode on here is just if you're having having any types of issues with inconsistencies on the switch, with any type of slam clicking or anything like that. It does kind of just tighten up the frequency response on the switches just a little bit tighter. Endgame Gear has a video out where they were testing the click latency on this using the LDAT. They also tested the end-to-end latency on the system. And then with the new XLAT, this is coming in at 0.077 milliseconds, which is the lowest click latency that I've seen recorded. So that combined with the incredible 8K performance that you're getting on this and all my testing, this mouse just honestly felt next level compared to anything else out there. So it was incredibly awesome to use, especially with these new GX switches that I love. They feel incredibly lightweight. So all I got to say is all around, I never thought I'd see myself using a wired mouse here in 2024, but this thing is really that good and we're checking out. They also have a bunch of switch packs that you can use for all of these mice. And just to be really clear, this new Kailh GX feature, even though the OP1 and the OP1 RGB does have the Kailh GX switches in it, it does not have the capability to access the GX high speed mode or the GX safe mode. So unfortunately you don't get that feature in these. So if you do prefer a different style switch or anything like that, they do have this TTC Gold switch pack, the Huano Blue Shell Pink Dots. They also have an Omron pack, and this is the Kailh GX lightweight pack. So these switches actually range from 50 to 55 GF of actuation force. And in my opinion, all around, I really do like these Kailh GX switches. I don't see a reason to swap them out. I would personally recommend this lighter switch pack for the OP1 8K if you do get this out and you would like to see these switches be a little bit lighter. But stock, they feel great. Stock in all these, they honestly feel great. And I would only really personally recommend using the Omron, the Huanos, or the TTC Golds in these. If you get them, you don't like the switches and you want to try something different due to the fact that these don't get to take advantage of the Kailh GX feature. So really cool stuff that they have all these different options. And just to be clear, the OP1 WE, it does use optical switches. So none of these switch packs will work for the OP1 WE, and the switch packs that are available for the OP1 WE obviously aren't going to work for these versions either, since you cannot interchange optical switches with mechanical ones. And even if you were to swap out to the bigger skates, it does have holes to access these screws. So just to be clear, these screws are only in the bottom. There are no screws in the top. So once you take these out, you just simply lift up the plate from the rear. It does have these hooks up here in the front. So as you're pulling this out, just make sure you tilt it back at an angle and you slide it back. And it is really simple on the PCB here. When you open this up, you do have these cables that go from the switch itself, which sit in the top shell, down to the bottom PCB, and the click number 2 goes to the right side, click number 1 goes to the left side. You just unplug these. So to do this, you just simply unscrew this top screw, unscrew the bottom screw, it comes out. The next switch is really simple to go ahead and just place in here. Then you go ahead and you screw in the bottom and the top. One thing to note when you are doing this is you can actually adjust the tolerances of the switch itself. If you were to tighten these down, you're obviously going to have a much tighter tolerance. But if you were to hand tighten this front screw up here in the top and loosen it up just a little bit, it can give you just a little bit more play and potentially make the clicks just a little bit lighter. But aside from that, it really is this simple. And then once that is done, you can repeat the exact same process on mouse button number 2, and you just simply come in here and plug this in. As you're putting this back together, do make sure that you are careful with these cables. As you can see here, they do come naturally kind of bent. So I would just kind of push them in from the sides right here to make sure you have them nice and tucked in so they don't get pinched by the shell or anything like that. And obviously you want to be easy here when you're pulling on these cables, moving them around, bending them, anything like that, so that they don't potentially break on you. But then after that, all you do is you slide these hooks back up here into the front. Just make sure everything looks even all the way around the shell of the mouse. And then you can just screw in the bottom screws and you are all set to go. Make sure that you test out the switches before you put the shell back together to make sure that they feel like they're installed in there properly and that you are okay with the tolerances on them. So let's go ahead and demonstrate a click sound check using all these different types of switches. I will go ahead and put a description up at the top of the screen as I'm doing this. They did let me know that even though some of these switches in the switch pack do have a broad range of variants, if you were to pick one of these up, that these are all quality checked and these switches are going to be paired with one another so that they're within 5 GF from one another of actuation force. Alright guys, so that about wraps things up here on the Endgame Gear OP1 mice, and really going deep into these, I really grew a great respect for Endgame Gear. Not that I didn't already have so, but again, just to see the differences in the quality, the tolerances on these, just the overall detail of explaining the actuation force of the switches, how easy it is to hot swap these out, and the performance of this OP1 8K is truly just incredible. I know that people have been really frustrated with Endgame Gear taking so long to release the XM2W, and I can truly say that after trying out this OP1 8K, I know a lot of people down in the comments probably would think that I'm being paid to say something like this. I'm not. I'm just a huge enthusiast in gaming mice, and I would say that for me personally, coming out with the OP1 8K, this really is their turnaround and the redemption going forward. I'm really impressed with what they've done with these Kailh GX switches. Just the overall performance of this feels great. Again, being completely honest with you guys, I never imagined I'd be using a wired mouse in 2024, and I can truly say that I absolutely love this thing. So if you are an enthusiast like myself personally, and you would be excited to check out potentially the fastest gaming mouse on the market and this new switch technology, I can absolutely say that this mouse is a banger. It really impressed me. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I do myself personally. There's no question that the overall build, the detail that they put into this thing, has me even looking forward even way more to the XM2W. It's probably one of my most anticipated mice right now after checking out what they were able to do with the OP1 8K. Alright guys, so if you have any questions or feel like I left anything out, please let me know down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed watching this video and are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please drop this video a like, subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.